a list of top 10 Anglicans, most influential Anglicans, most important Anglicans. You can define that however you want. If you were making a top 10 list of the most important Anglicans, who are some of the people that you would include? Ray, say it out loud. William Wilberforce. Who else? Richard Hooker. C.S. Lewis. We're taking notes just in case we haven't included these. Yeah, Shannon. Okay, who else? Yeah. Tom. N.T. Wright, thank you. Michael Curry. Yep, whom else? Whom else? Whom else? Eileen. Nelson Mandela. Not really an Anglican, but he's of that tradition. That's all right. How about, did you mean Desmond Tutu? You might have meant Desmond Tutu. Another South African Anglican. Yeah. Anybody else have a guess? Henry VIII. Controversial choice. Yeah. That's right. So I have on my phone, I have three top 10 lists of Anglicans. One of which is the most influential on Anglicanism. One is the most influential on Western thought. And one of them is the 10 that I would actually teach a class on. And they're not the same. And then I've also asked Charles and Sarah and Laura to share with me their lists. And together we have to come up with one list. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know who will be next week. We are still debating who will be next week. But today is set. And probably 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are pretty well set. But in ascending order, we are going to be looking at the top 10 Anglicans. And now I'm going to hand out the handout. And today we will read about William Wilberforce. Did you know that ahead of time, or was that just I didn't think so, because it's a pretty tightly kept secret. So I was kind of delighted that you said so. All right, so I'm going to hand out handouts now. Actually, Charles, would you help me hand out handouts? Do you mind doing that? Thanks. Here you go. Yeah, would you hand out handouts? Thank you. Let's give you half of them. I'm going to give Charles this half. Thank you. All right. William Wilberforce. Who knows anything at all about William Wilberforce? I mean, anything at all. A couple of us. How many of you have no idea who William Wilberforce is? Oh, that's so good. That's what we're hoping for. That's great. As the handouts are going out, I'll tell you that part of the joy of this class is to learn who we are and what has shaped us and our faith. And I think that means learning about some people that we don't know about, and particularly their contributions to Anglican thought. So we're going to start with William Wilberforce today. This prayer, so William Wilberforce is a saint in the church. The Episcopal Church, along with some other churches in the Anglican tradition, have a date to commemorate William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce is I think he's July 30th. I'm not exactly sure, but he's somewhere around there, somewhere near the end of July. And in the book of Lesser Feasts and Fasts, not major feasts like the conversion of St. Paul or Christmas, but lesser feasts, which are still worth noting and learning about, William Wilberforce is commemorated. His life and witness as a saint of God is commemorated in our church. And this is the collect for William Wilberforce's day. Let's pray that opening prayer out loud together. Let your continual mercy, O Lord, kindle in your church the never-failing gift of love, that following the example of your servant, William Wilberforce, we may have grace to defend the poor and maintain the cause of those who have no helper, for the sake of him who gave his life for us, your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Who knows who next week will be? Each week we'll update our top 10 list. But let's start with just a description. This is again from Lesser Feasts and Fasts. If you bought a copy of Lesser Feasts and Fasts, you can download it for free on the internet. The most recent approved edition is 2022. Each entry has a little biography as well as collects, Rite 1 and Rite 2 collects, and lessons appointed for the day. It'll also tell you what proper preface to use for communion that day. This is the biography of William Wilberforce from Lesser Feast and Fast. Who would read that for us, please? And James, would you take the microphone to them? James? Who would read the biography of William Wilberforce for us, please? Lowell will read it. Thanks.
The life of William Wilberforce refutes the popular notion that a politician cannot be a saintly Christian dedicated to the service of humanity. Wilberforce was born into an affluent family in Hull, Yorkshire on August 24, 1759, and was educated at St. John's College, Cambridge. In 1780, he was elected to the House of Commons, and he served in it until 1825. He died in London, July 29, 1833, and was buried in Westminster Abbey. His conversion to an evangelical Christian life occurred in 1784, several years after he entered Parliament. Fortunately, he was induced by his friends not to abandon his political activities after this inward change in his life, but thereafter he steadfastly refused to accept high office or a peerage. He gave himself unstintingly to the promotion of overseas missions, popular education, and the reformation of public manners and morals. He also supported parliamentary reform and Catholic emancipation. Above all, his fame rests upon his persistent, uncompromising, and single-minded crusade for the abolition of slavery and the slave trade. That sordid traffic was abolished in 1807. He died just 1 month before Parliament put an end to slavery in the British dominions. One of the last letters written by John Wesley was addressed to Wilberforce. In it, Wesley gave him his blessing for his noble enterprise. Wilberforce's eloquence as a speaker, his charm and personal address, and his profound religious spirit made him a formidable power for good, and his countrymen came to recognize in him a man of heroic greatness.
Thank you. I'm curious, if you didn't know anything about Wilberforce before you walked through the door today, and you've just now heard that, like, where does your mind go? What does it seem like Wilberforce's contribution is to Anglicanism, to the world? Why would we be talking about Wilberforce? What seems important in this description? What sort of person was Wilberforce? Yeah, thanks.
One thing I noticed is his fight to end slavery.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody seen the movie, the popular film? What's it called? I can't remember the name of the film. There's I don't just mean, like, there are lots of documentaries about Wilberforce, but it's the one named after the ship. What's the one? It's named after the ship. No, it's not Amistad. It's, anyway, one of the movies. Anyway, I haven't seen it. But there's actually a popular movie, like the kind of popular movie that you might, if you're in part of the Garner family, might go see in the cinema. Not just the kind that you would download on Netflix or some other obscure. So, like, he's entered popular culture largely because, as Trevor says, because of his work against slavery, work to end the slave trade. What else seems interesting about Wilberforce? Yeah, Ray.
Unlike an abrasive person like William Lloyd Garrison in the United States, he seems like he was personally attractive, that when he would talk, people would think, gee, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah. One of the things that makes him distinct is that after he converted to evangelicalism, the sort of traditional conservative, zealous expression of faith, that he remained a pleasant guy. People still liked him. And what I think is curious is the people who published his biography in Lesser Feast and Fasts seem to suggest that what his friends did was convince him not to abandon his political activities. But actually, what his friends did was stay friends with him. I don't think he considered leaving his political activities, but he was worried that he would lose all of his friends because, as we'll hear in a little bit, evangelicals were not popular in social circles, and somehow he managed to stay a really nice guy, which is delightful. Jeannie, up front, raise your hand high. Thank you.
I think notable is he wasn't a hypocrite.
Wasn't a hypocrite. Say more about that.
Because he, to me at least, he upheld the teachings of Christ even within his political movement and didn't give in to the way for more money. Necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that Jesus' way doesn't produce opulence and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But
he seemed to put his money in his heart and his life where his mouth or faith was.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I love that. Thank you. Any other things that you observe about Wilberforce so far? Yeah. Shannon and then Christine.
Sorry. Just the three adjectives that describe him: persistent, uncompromising, and single-minded.
Yeah, persistent, uncompromising, and single-minded. Raise your hand, Christine. James? No, we'll go Ray. James, Ray, but afterwards, right up front, please. Thank you.
His political reach extended 30 years past his death. His example was perhaps the major reason why the British did not endorse the Confederacy.
Yeah, thank you. So in some ways beyond, raise your hand, Christine. In some ways beyond what we see in this testament, like his influence had repercussions and reverberations through the decades. Yeah, Christine.
It was just a small little comment, but I'm one of the ones that had never heard of him. But the John Wesley thing was impressive to me.
Yeah. So if you grew up Methodist, I grew up Methodist, you learn about John Wesley. John Wesley was an Anglican. He might be on our top 10 list. You'll have to wait and see. John Wesley was an Anglican, and I'll take this moment to say a little bit more about Wilberforce's life and how John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, also influenced Wilberforce, and they became kind of colleagues in a sense. So as you hear there, Wilberforce, born in 1759, what you don't hear is that he was born in a wealthy family. His father was a wealthy merchant and a politician. His father was elected mayor of Hull twice, two separate occasions. He became the mayor of Hull, their town. But then his father died. His father died in 1768 when he was 9 years old, and his mother had a hard time being a single mother, and so she sent her son to live with his uncle and aunt, wealthy Londoners. They had a house in the St. James part of London and another house in Wimbledon, so fairly wealthy. But his uncle was married to a Methodist, someone with Methodist roots. And sure enough, Wilberforce became fascinated with this kind of living out your faith in ways that aren't just defined by the tradition, by showing up in church. The established church in England, if you show up at church, you're a part of the church. But to be a Methodist, to be a nonconformist, requires some energy, some intention. And so Wilberforce became captivated with this Methodism, with this particular way of being Christians. Methodism, heart strangely warmed, Bible study, devotion, prayer meetings, taking faith, perhaps we would say, more seriously. And Wilberforce's mother, and in particular his grandfather, didn't like that one bit. So they called him to move back to Hull. They were like, no more nonconformists, no more Methodists, no more Presbyterians, no more Puritans. You're an Anglican through and through. So he came back to Hull, and they went to enroll him in the same grammar school that he had left, but the headmaster of the grammar school was also a Methodist. So they had to yank him out of school and send him off to a boarding school. And so they did their job in the sense that he remained a faithful Anglican for his whole life, but even more to the point, he didn't take religion very seriously. He was quite the carouser. He liked to play cards, he liked to drink, he liked to dance, and he liked the company of women, which is to say everything that a good, faithful, upstanding Methodist would find very unbecoming. So as a result, he became kind of a party guy. He went to college, St. John's College in Cambridge, a old, well-established college at the University of Cambridge. And he enjoyed life. He drank a lot. He had a great social life. He was the life of the party. And he became really good friends with William Pitt. You might know that name, Prime Minister of England. And kind of on a lark, William Pitt was like, let's run for Parliament. And so sure enough, at the age of 21, while he was still an undergraduate, with all of the money that he had at his disposal because his late father was a rich man, he spent money to get himself elected. And sure enough, while he was in college, William Wilberforce, along with his friend, William Pitt, were elected as members of Parliament. Not long after he was elected a member of Parliament, his heart changed. He and his mother went on a trip to Europe, and while he was on this trip, he was reading a text, an evangelical text that reawakened in him a desire to take his faith more seriously. And we don't know exactly when it happened, but we do know because of the journals that he kept that he very quickly repented of all the drinking and card playing and carousing that he had done, and instead filled his time with prayer and Bible study and Christian fellowship. And as I noted earlier, to the surprise of his friends, he remained a pleasant fellow. They enjoyed his company. So he would show up and he would go hang out with you. He would go out with you to the pub. He just wouldn't drink. And he would remind the people he was with about what it means to belong to God, what it means to be faithful. And so he had this ability to bridge the gap between sort of the secular world of Anglicans, Christians, maybe we would say half-hearted or sort of established Christians that didn't have to take their faith seriously, and the significant relationship that he had with Christ in his own life. Another thing that makes Wilberforce particularly important in history is that because he remained an Anglican, he was able to be in the House of Commons, a member of Parliament, when others, like Methodists and Quakers and Catholics, were not able to serve as members of Parliament. Only proper Anglicans could be members of Parliament. Now, to his credit, William Wilberforce did not want to be beholden to any political party, so he was elected as an independent, and later as an independent became an important vote in supporting William Pitt's minority government when he became prime minister. But because he was able to be in Parliament, he was able to advance the cause of anti-slavery, which up to that point had not been an Anglican movement, but had largely been a Quaker movement. Quakers were known as the founders, the origin of the anti-slavery movement, the abolition movement, but they didn't have a seat in Parliament, so they had to convince members of Parliament to try to push forward their own political desires, which is to end slavery. It took a couple of years of him meeting with Quakers, largely Quakers, learning about the horrors of slavery, and also establishing himself as a member of Parliament before he began to introduce bills calling for the abolition of slavery. The first one he introduced was in 1789, and he pretty much introduced an anti-slavery bill every year until it finally passed in 1807. Right? So 18 years of every year saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, fighting an uphill battle, continuing to find language, arguments that would persuade more and more people to support the cause of anti-slavery. And each time it got a little closer. We get more hearings, we get actual votes, and the vote would get closer. And only in 1807 was the bill finally passed. I find this description a little careless because although the bill that called for the abolition of slavery did pass in 1807, the bill was only implemented very slowly and gradually throughout the years. And as we saw, he died 1 month before Parliament put an end to slavery, and he died in 1833. So 26 years later, finally that takes hold. So it took 18 years to get the bill passed. It took 26 years for the full effect of that and subsequent bills to take effect throughout the British Empire. Also to note, Wilberforce's bill in 1807 and those that followed it did not provide any compensation to those who had been enslaved, but did provide compensation to the owners of slaves who had to give up their property, their labor, and the government compensated them for that loss. Just good to remember, that's true in our country's history as well. People who had to give up slaves were paid for giving up their slaves, even when the former slaves were sometimes given land and a mule, but sometimes even that promise fell through. So good to note that at least the bill was moving in the right direction, even if we would still find it incomplete. The last thing I want to say about Wilberforce before I stop and have questions, and then we'll read more of what he actually wrote, is that Wilberforce had 6 children, including 3 sons who became clergymen. 2 of those sons were Anglican clergymen of the Anglo-Catholic movement. They went to Oxford. They fell in love with the Anglo-Catholic movement, the Oxford movement, and as a result, they both became Anglo-Catholics, Tractarians, as they would have been known back then, one of whom, Samuel became a bishop in the Church of England, and his other son, Robert, became a presbyter, a priest in the Church of England with Anglo-Catholic identity. Another of his sons, Henry, became Roman Catholic, left the Episcopal Church altogether, which I think is really interesting that William Wilberforce, who was an evangelical, evangelicals and Catholics are opposite ends of the Anglican spectrum. Maybe it's because they wanted to follow in their father's footsteps and stick it to him at the same time. We don't know. But those 3 sons became clergy, 2 of whom from the Anglo-Catholic branch of the church, but another left and went to the Catholicism more generally. I think actually a better description of that is, although evangelicals and Anglo-Catholics are opposite ends of the spectrum, it's actually a kind of a loop that loops back on itself, because Wilberforce's understanding of evangelicalism was putting faith into practice, and actually that's actually the heart of the Anglo-Catholic movement and the Oxford movement, which is caring for the poor and those who live in urban areas. And so as a result, they're actually doing the same thing, though from opposite ends of a spectrum that almost bends all the way back onto itself. So in large measure, Wilberforce's sons followed in his footsteps by caring for the poor, by worrying about those who didn't have a voice, who didn't have a place in wider civic life, even if it was from the Anglo-Catholic end rather than the evangelical end. That's a lot from me. Questions, comments, observations? Trent. And if you'll raise your hand and leave your hand up, that'll help James see who wants to speak. Trent.
Yeah, so what this brings to mind for me, especially that part at the end about how these 2 seemingly opposed ways met at a social ministry emphasis. Now, sometimes we get in our head that in order to get here, you have to start there, whether belief-wise or whether practice-wise, how we practice and display our faith. In order to get to, say, a strong social ministry, it's important that you start here.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And this points that out.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks. Who else has a response, question, or comment about Wilberforce? Yeah, thanks.
Wilberforce has been an example for me, and I see his movement to abolish slavery and the persistence of that is connected to the reparations movement here now. John Conyers, I think, started introducing H.R. 40 in the late 80s and did that for about 40 years. So I see a connection there.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. Who else? Comment or question about Wilberforce?
Yeah, I also find it really hard to believe that he got elected and then became a better person.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
But
Yeah.
I like his moral courage. Like, it's very easy in this room to say that slavery was bad and we're glad it was eliminated. That's very easy for
Yeah.
us. But
Yeah.
like reparations, for example, does take a lot more moral courage.
It does. Yeah, I do think the way they began the description is really helpful. Refutes the popular notion that a politician cannot be a saintly Christian. Right? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for isolating that, for identifying that. Also, it's so interesting to me that he came to politics from the very position that he ended up sort of rejecting, which is establishment, wealth, without doing anything, right? And he wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough for him. Yeah. Other comments about Wilberforce? Elizabeth.
I think he was also a really small man, like 5'3".
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, and he loved big parties and stuff like that. He was super popular, but didn't he die almost broke?
I don't remember.
I think he
I
lost
don't know.
everything he had, and he was willing to give that up to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
So I feel like a man coming from an affluent family, 5'3", getting up in Parliament, trying to say all the things he said is remarkable. Wouldn't
Yeah.
we love somebody to do that now?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Jeannie up front.
Just an interesting note, he was elected to the House of Commons, when he was 21?
Yep.
And then, as we know now, the brain doesn't fully develop until you're about 25, so that's when he
Yeah.
made his, kind of had his inward conversion kind of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe that just kind of supports the brain development
I love
thing.
it. Thank you for noting that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, think about all the things that you did between the ages of 21 and 25. And let's be grateful that those of us who are on the other side of that are on the other side of that. And especially those of us who grew up in an age where there wasn't social media to document all of our mistakes, right? Yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's read a little bit from Wilberforce. So Wilberforce was a saint of God, which is to say, because of God and God's love and the power of the Holy Spirit, he was a holy witness of Christ, to Christ. You are a saint of God as well. If you are a baptized member of the body of Christ, you are a saint. I don't know that in fact, I'm almost certain that all 10 of the people will not be saints in the traditional sense, in that their name is on a calendar, their date is on a calendar, because some of them are still alive or have died recently enough that they haven't sort of been dead long enough for us to put their names on a calendar. But you're a saint and they're a saint. And the question that I want us to ask as we review these top 10 Anglicans is, how do they bear witness? How do they bear witness to God and God's love for the world in Jesus? And part of that, of course, is anti-slavery, but a part of it is also his evangelicalism and his refusal to let sort of his identity as an established Christian stand in the way of him practicing his faith. So the first bit I want to read, this is the title. He wrote this, notice when he wrote this, 1797. He's still pretty young. This is the title of his work, A Practical View of the Prevailing Religious System of Professed Christians and Higher and Middle Classes in this Country, Contrasted with Real Christianity. So who would read that first paragraph for us, please, right from the beginning? Yeah, thank you, all the way up front. Here it comes. Yep.
Before we proceed to the consideration of any particular defects in the religious system of the bulk of professed Christians, it may be proper to point out the very inadequate conception which they entertain of the importance of Christianity in general, of its peculiar nature and superior excellence. If we listen to their conversation, virtue is praised and vice is censured. Piety is perhaps applauded and profaneness condemned. So far, all is well. But let anyone who would not be deceived by these barren generalities examine a little more closely, and he will find that not to Christianity in particular, but at best to religion in general, perhaps to mere morality, their homage is intended to be paid. With Christianity as distinct from these, they are little acquainted. Their views of it have been so cursory and superficial that, far from discerning its characteristic essence, they have little more than perceived those exterior circumstances which distinguish it from other forms of religion. There are some few facts and perhaps some leading doctrines and principles of which they cannot be wholly ignorant. But of the consequences and relations and practical uses of these, they have few ideas or none at all.
Thank you. So if you were reading this work, Practical Consideration, and this was on page 1 and 2, what does it tell you is on, and it's about a 400-page document. What would this tell you? Yeah. What would this tell you about what's on his mind? What gets your attention? What bee is in his bonnet?
As much as it says these people are having this particular interaction with religion, he doesn't lay blame on those individuals. And I feel like this is the beginning of him saying, we have trod this road for hundreds of years now, and everybody says the right things and they do the right things, but they don't, the system itself is flawed in the way that we are currently experiencing it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, who else? What else? Yeah, Ray or Brentley? Yeah, Brentley.
Okay, so it gets a little kind of difficult to follow the tree pattern here. I kind of almost wish we had a whiteboard where it's like Christianity and, anyways, okay, so there's a difference between Anglicanism and evangelism. It's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, that's
even
okay.
both
Yeah,
of
I know
those.
what you mean.
Oh gosh, see, this is why I need a whiteboard. It's even hard for me to ask this question. It took me 15 minutes to even get here to connect all these
Yeah.
dots. I'll ask you in a minute.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Think
Sorry.
about it and come back. Ray in the middle, James. Yep, right in the middle. Ray. James, right in the middle. Thank you.
He's had 17 years in Parliament. It appears to be almost like it should be read out loud. And you can see he's setting people up for persuasion. He's
Yeah.
trying to induce self-transformation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's funny, the introduction, before this, the introduction, he says, I've been wanting to write this for a really long time, but I've been busy in Parliament, and I needed to kind of establish myself so that you would know that what I'm really trying to say to you. So I think it's a carefully worded petition. Yeah, it's a persuasive piece. Yeah. Y'all know I lived in England for 2 years. I was formed for ministry in an Anglican Church of England seminary. Like still to this day, the evangelical wing of the church is although it's within the establishment, it's largely an anti-establishment wing. It assumes that establishment Christianity is not real, it's not lively, it's not vibrant. It needs to be redeemed. It needs to be filled with the Holy Spirit. It needs to be more active. You know, in England, you are an Anglican until you say that you are not. If you are born in a parish, you are a member of the parish. You can be baptized and married and buried in that parish, even if you've never once set foot in the parish door, even if you've never once paid a nickel to the church. They don't have nickels, but you know what I mean. And so evangelicals are like, we are tired of just assuming that everybody is a Christian, everybody is an Anglican because they were born here. There's got to be more than that. And so this is that kind of, he's excited about something that people who think of themselves as Christians aren't even thinking about. And he wants to sort of awaken that within them. Let's read the second paragraph where he gets, I think, really hopeful. Who would read this next bit for the rest of, yeah, thank you. Hannah, right behind you. Thank you.
Let true Christians then, with becoming earnestness, strive in all things to recommend their profession, and to put to silence the vain scoffs of ignorant objectors. Let them boldly assert the cause of Christ in an age when so many who bear the name of Christians are ashamed of him, and let them consider as devolved on them the important duty of suspending for a while the fall of their country, and perhaps of performing a still more extensive service to the society at large, not by busy interference in politics in which it cannot be confessed, but there is much uncertainty, but rather by that sure and radical benefit of restoring the influence of religion and of raising the standard of morality. Let them be active, useful, generous towards each other, manifestly moderate and self-denying in themselves. Let them be ashamed of idleness as they would be of the most acknowledged sin. Let them cultivate a Catholic spirit of universal goodwill and of amicable fellowship towards all those, of whether sect or denomination, who, differing from them in non-essentials, agree with them in the grand fundamentals of religion. Let them countenance of men of real piety wherever they are found, and encourage in others every attempt to repress the progress of vice, and to revive and diffuse the influence of religion and virtue. Let their earnest prayers be constantly offered, that such endeavors may be successful, and that the abused long-suffering of God may still continue to us the invaluable privilege of vital Christianity. Let them pray continually for their country in this season of national difficulty. We bear upon us but too plainly the marks of a declining empire. Who can say that but that the governor of the universe, who declares himself to be a God, who hears the prayers of his servants, may, in answer to their intercessions, for a while avert our ruin, and continue to us the fullness of those temporal blessings, which in such abundant measure we have hitherto enjoyed.
Thank you. That's not easy, but you did great. So I think we overlook Wilberforce's contribution to Christianity, and particularly to Anglicanism, as a renewal of heartfelt Christianity, not only as a criticism from the outside. I think often evangelicals in the Church of England are on the outside throwing stones. Like, Wilberforce has this ability to build from within. He's got this kind of Methodist intensity about him, but he's not interested in leaving or breaking off. He's interested in reforming and calling to faith those in the heart. We don't have establishment religion in this country, but I bet William Wilberforce would have a lot to say with the deist movements, the Enlightenment movements, that were largely the religion of the nation during its founding, the Jeffersonians. Wilberforce is not interested in that, except he's interested in starting there and building. He's not throwing it out. He's starting and building. I think we underestimate the importance of Wilberforce in holding on to these kind of renewal minds, these renewal efforts, but folding them into the heart of Anglicanism and Episcopalian sort of identity, rather than sort of splintering off from the outside. So hold on to that. I don't want us to miss the chance to hear from his letter on the abolition of the slave trade addressed to the freeholders and other inhabitants of Yorkshire. It's long. Can I get 2 volunteers to read this? Thank you, Jeannie. Jeannie, would you please read the first 2 paragraphs? They're the long 2 paragraphs. And then would somebody pick up and read after her and read the rest? Who might read the rest after that? Thank you, James. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Regarding slavery, the enormous dimensions of this mass of misery are such that our organs are not fitted for the contemplation of it. Our affections are not suited to deal with it. We are lost in the immensity of the prospect. We are distracted by its variety. Could I but separate this immense aggregate into all its component parts and present them one by one to your view in all their particularity of wretchedness, you would then have a more just impression of the immensity of the misery which we wish to terminate. This cannot be done, but let us, in concluding our melancholy course, employ a few moments in taking some family or some individual Negro and following him through all his successive stages of suffering. From his first becoming the victim of some nightly attack on his dwelling, or from his being sentenced to slavery for the benefit of those who condemned him, to the final close of his wretched life. I will not attempt to describe his sufferings. Estimate from your own feelings what must be his in all the various situations through which he passes. Conceive, if you can, the agony with which, as he is hurried away by his unfeeling captors, he looks back upon the native village which contains his wife and children who are left behind. Or, supposing them to have been carried off also, with which he sees their sufferings and looks forward to the dreadful future, while his own anguish is augmented by witnessing theirs. Accompany him through his long and painful march to the coast. Behold him, when the powers of nature are almost exhausted by fatigue and affliction, urged forward like a brute by the lash, or with some more bitterness of suffering, seeing the fainting powers of his wretched wife or daughter roused into fresh exertions by the same savage discipline. Behold him next brought on shipboard and delivered over to men, whose color, appearance, language are all strange to him, while every object around must excite terror. If his wretched family have not been brought away with him, he is tormented by the consciousness that they are left destitute and unprotected, and that his eyes will see them no more. If his wife and daughter have been carried off with him, he sees them dragged away to another part of the ship. While he is debarred from their society, and often even from the sight of them. What must be his anguish from being conscious not only that they are suffering many of the same evils as himself, but still more, from knowing that they are exposed to all those brutalities, the idea of which must be most cutting to a husband or father, while his misery becomes more intense from the consciousness that they are close to him, though he cannot alleviate their misery or protect their weakness.
Thank you. James?
See our wretched family or individual arriving at the destined port, and then call to mind the abominations of the sale of a Negro cargo. See the wretched individual or family exposed naked like brutes, and the same message taken as with their fellow brutes, to ascertain whether or not their limbs and members are perfect. See them forced to jump or dance, to prove their agility, or still more affecting, see them afraid, each lest the other only should be bought by some particular purchaser, and therefore displaying their agility, while their hearts are wrung with anguish, in order to induce the buyer to take them both. To look around and to see not a single face of friendship or relationship, no eye to cheer, no staff to lean upon. Surely the comfortless close of such a Negro's comfortless life, though not of equal intensity of suffering with many of the evils of the former scenes through which he has passed, is yet from the deep tinge and uniform melancholy of his coloring, as affecting a state to the humane mind, as any whatever in a life abounding in all the varieties of human wretchedness. Such from first to last is the condition of human existence, to which that abhorred traffic, the slave trade, annually consigns many thousands of our unoffending fellow creatures. This is a most astonishing phenomenon when we consider the general character of the people of this country, when we call to mind the unparalleled benevolence and liberality that can be found among us, when we take into account that not a new species of distress can be pointed out, but that almost immediately some meeting takes place, some society is formed for preventing it. Is it not utterly astonishing that Great Britain should have been the prime agent in carrying out this trade of blood? Posterity will scarcely believe it. We, the happiest, render the Africans the most miserable of mankind.
Thank you. I find his words so powerful. The situation itself, of course, is powerful and haunting. I think Wilberforce has a gift for conveying in this description a lot of emotion. It's another 400-page letter. He spent a long time writing it, but after decades of trying to get Parliament to pass an abolition bill, he found that he needed to work and rework yet again these haunting words in ways that convince those who otherwise might not be interested in voting. It's not just emotional. It covers a lot of the same topics that we still hear and debate today, like it was Africans who sold them into slavery. We're not the only ones responsible for this. And he addresses that head on. He talks about the experience not only of those who were enslaved, but the effect that it has on the enslavers and the entire community, culture, and church. It's a really powerful text. And this is part of Wilberforce's gift to us. One of the reasons I wanted us to read Wilberforce as a member of our top 10 Anglicans is because his work in bringing the work of the abolitionist movement into the Anglican tradition, into the establishment church, and therefore into the Episcopal Church, still lingers. This is still our work. This is still important work for us to do. So not only is his anti-abolition work admirable, but Wilberforce is the one that kind of integrates that work into our church, our tradition, our Anglican identity. And it's not an accident that he's also the one that succeeds in integrating this sense of renewal and spirit-led fervor into the heart of Anglicanism, in the heart of our tradition, not by rejecting establishment religion, but by working through it. I find his life and witness powerful. We've got time for maybe one or two comments or questions, thoughts about Wilberforce, about what we've read or about what you've learned. Shannon.
Just in this writing, we see how he puts the reader into the place. Like, imagine you're this man, which is so powerful in writing to make that point.
Yeah, interestingly enough, He sounds like a preacher, but he did not want to be ordained. He was never ordained. He was not interested in that. His calling was to serve as a politician. Yeah. Lowell.
Yeah, I think what you just alluded to, like Wilberforce gives the lie to that false dichotomy that, that we see in our community, that you can be one kind of Christian and another kind, the social justice kind of Christian or the evangelical kind of Christian. That's not the best way to say that, but I think we kind of know what I mean. Wilberforce, his life says, no, both are part of who we are.
And are inseparable. Yeah, Mary Margaret, right behind you. Right? Turn. Nope. James, right there.
I always think of Wilberforce University, which is one of the country's oldest HBCUs. So his namesake lived on as, his name lived on as a legacy of educating blacks in our country.
Yeah, thank you. And up front, hand, Jeannie. Thank you. And then we'll stop there.
It probably goes without saying, but his genius in utilizing the established system, if you will, to bring forth his ideas is much more powerful than like breaking off because of hypocrisy within, the established norms.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't think he would have been able to accomplish things that he accomplished.
Yeah, thank you. So I hope you've enjoyed Wilberforce. Next week, number 9. You'll have to show up to figure out who number 9 is. I might have to show up to figure out who number 9 is. So number 9 next week. Let me say one more time before you leave. I hope you'll take some art with you. If you are captivated by any of the canvases on the wall, put your name and email address under it. And afterwards, we will look at who has signed up and figure out to whom it should go. There are also canvases in the South Parish Hall, as well as the boardroom, that lower green room across from the nursery. If you would like any of the pieces that are in the folio boxes, you do not need to sign up for those. You can take them with you. We have about 800 pieces of art, which means that if every person in this room takes 10, we will have barely made a dent. So don't be afraid to take them. As I said at the 8:45 service, decorate your house, your office, your lake house, your beach house, your dorm room. Take them to your dentist and invite your dentist to put them up. But no, we want people to see and celebrate this work, and I appreciate your help with that. Thanks so much.